welcome to the Planning Commission of the Village of Morton for Monday, February 28th, 2022. And we need a roll call.
Dial. Here. Knapp.
Here.
Smock.
Here.
Ritterbusch.
Here.
Keach.
Here.
Zobrist. Absent. Opperly.
Here.
Yordi. Absent. DeWeese.
Here.
Quorum.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the meeting from October 25th, 2021. Are there any comments or questions about the minutes that you saw in your packet?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second.
By voice roll, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Okay, so tonight we have some public hearings, and before we enter the public hearing, we'll have some information from our counsel, Mr. Pat McGrath.
Thank you. Public hearings are being held tonight pursuant to published notice. Any person wishing to make a comment to the Plan Commission will be afforded an opportunity to do so and will give their testimony under oath or affirmation. Any person living within 250 feet of a property at issue who wishes to cross-examine another testifying witness may be afforded the opportunity to do so at the discretion of our chair on matters germane to issues before the Plan Commission. No members of the public may address the commission or cross-examine an applicant until recognized by the chair. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Plan Commission will make a recommendation to the village board. The Plan Commission makes recommendations only. The village board is responsible for taking final action on these matters.
Thank you, sir. So the first item tonight on the agenda on the public hearing is petition number 22-01ZA. A zoning amendment petition has been filed by the Village of Morton. The Village of Morton is proposing the following zoning changes for the described properties. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brad Marks for an explanation of his proposal.
Thank you, Jeff. So if you remember, back in October, we brought a similar petition. This one is a little revised from that one. We took the recommendations from you all, the concerns. There was 3 properties that are currently businesses on First Avenue. So the rezoning that is proposed now would be for those 3 businesses to not get zoned to B1, or to not go to residential, but to go to B1. So then the remaining parcels that are currently being used as residential would be zoned to R1.
Okay.
Any questions? More than happy to.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Marks?
Well, what this does now is make everything conforming. We don't have any non-conforming uses on First Street then, do we?
If this is approved, yes. Yes.
Back in October, I mentioned my concern about the fact that this isn't being brought forward by the homeowners. And I think I talked about a specific kind of active permission by the homeowners to respond and say, yes, they want it to be this way. Otherwise, they purchased a property with a certain expectation that might now be changed, and not by their action, by our action. So maybe in this time I'm a little sensitive to government overreach of citizens' rights and things like that, but I'm just curious, did anything change between October and now where we have a sense of this list of, I think, 26 properties? Are they all on board with this change?
Well, I mean, that's up to them to acknowledge if they're not on board. Everyone received a letter. By ordinance, I send a letter to every property owner, so they had the opportunity to come to this meeting to express their, concerns.
And I did see that at our last meeting, according to the transcript, there was a Mrs. Smith who came and spoke, and I think her address is the last on the list, 313 North First Avenue, and I believe she spoke against the change of zoning. but I see her property on the list to be changed. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I do not believe that parcel is being used as a business. It is not being currently used as a business.
Okay.
So to change that would bring it conforming to what it is being used as.
So I don't know if I'm the only one who has that concern that we're taking a property that people purchased that had flexibility, they could make a business, they could create a business out of that property, and now changing it kind of without their consent. Am I the only one that has that concern, or does anybody share that
No,
concern?
I share that concern. And what, do we have people here that want to speak about this, and or are we supposed
Well,
to?
I think we're going to open it up to the,
And do we have a chance to talk after that as well?
yes,
Then I would propose maybe we move to that phase.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And then have discussion
All right.
after.
I just want to see if there was a difference between how this was brought forward before and now. And it doesn't sound like there was an active permission. It was more passive. A letter was sent. If they don't respond,
But that's by ordinance. By ordinance,
Yeah.
we have a procedure
Yep.
to
Sure.
notify.
And this was brought from the town, not from,
This was recommended by the village
By the
board.
village.
Yeah, Craig, can I address you
Sure.
here?
yeah.
I think this came to light when the daycare attempted to come in.
Yeah.
And we looked at what that was, and actually, more than just looked at their petition, but looked at the neighborhood, went into the neighborhood, and like, this is a residential neighborhood that all the residences here are non-conforming. And the few businesses that are in there, which were B2, are, is what's this zoned for. And this, quite frankly, is zoned wrong. And that's sort of my thought, that we ought to look at zoning that what it needs to be and what it should be. What we did from the last planning commission is we took what you said and looked at it and said, okay, rather than changing the businesses that are in operation as businesses under B2, move them to B1, because quite frankly, that's what they fall under. They're under B1. And B2 takes all of the B1 with an additional 45 items. And in those 45, there's several items that we don't want to come in there. It's not proper for that to be in the neighborhood. And quite frankly, if we don't change it, there's no stopping any of those 45 to come in because it's zoned that. So that's sort of the thought process of the village board.
Yeah, and I completely understand that it's residential now, you want to keep it that way, maybe a lot of the residents want to keep it that way, and so I totally understand that. I just was hoping for a more active agreement on the part of the property owners before their property was rezoned without their intent.
And that,
maybe we'll find some tonight in
and I
public
can't
comment.
answer to that, but I'm not sure that didn't happen several years ago when they changed it from R1 to B2 and made the residences non-conforming.
And maybe it's a moot point but I'm curious as to why that ever happened.
Yeah, I think, and I can only, say I think that the vision of the planning commission and the village board way back when, and the best we can tell back in the 70s, was that the town was going to grow in a different means than what it did.
And they just picked a residential neighborhood to change the zoning.
Well, they picked it right off of Main Street.
They could have gone a lot of different directions, and they just
And
happened to go that way.
and the other section of First Avenue, the south section, is several businesses which fall into that.
Yeah. Okay.
We can keep talking about this, but let's go ahead and open up to the public and see if there's anybody here tonight who would like to speak to this petition. Anybody in the public? I see that hand. If you'll stand up and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, ma'am.
I'm the one that was here a few months ago that complained.
Could you please state your name and what your address is?
Beverly Smith, 313 North First Avenue, the last one on the list. Like I said a few months ago, we bought the house 30 years ago. It was owned for business. We paid for it all these years, and we want it kept that way. When you buy something, you don't expect people to come in and then take it away from you for no reason whatsoever. If somebody is putting in for the zoning and they don't want it, then let them do it just for their own property. But how have they got the right to go against everybody else? And as far as the city, I feel the city, it seems like, would want more businesses because it's better for people coming in and spending more money. But for the places that they want to change, a couple people that I've talked to didn't want to come because of retaliation. They're afraid they'd have trouble. And they said it's just like when children's taken away from you and then you have trouble. Well, they feel they'd have trouble with the city. But one lady said she thought about, because of losing everything they had during COVID practically, and they're barely hanging on for their home, she wanted to maybe start either a daycare or else sewing clothes and taking in ironing and stuff. And then a gentleman said he thought about fixing lawnmowers and repairing bikes and making stuff like woodcraft things. But they didn't want to appear because, like I said, they didn't want to feel that they would have trouble later because of it. To me, I feel if you've paid for it and you want it, that's why you buy it, you should be allowed to keep it. Why should they come in and tell you after that you can't do it? I just feel that's completely wrong. In a way, it's a free country, but it's not if you buy a home and think you're going to get what you're paying for. Then they take it away. Now, when they take it away, one lady asked a couple months ago, will they reduce the taxes because they do that? No, she was told they won't. You're going to keep the taxes up, even if the zoning is took away. That means you're not really getting what you're paying for because that's what you paid for all the years or however how long people have it. I just feel that's wrong and it's not a way you do people. I feel do unto others as you want others to do unto you. How would any of you like it if somebody come in and did that with your car or your home or something that you have? I just feel that's not a very good way they should do it, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So, please come to the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Sorry, didn't plan to speak tonight, but I'd like to about this.
Could you please give your name
Oh,
and your
sorry.
address?
My name's Austin McKimmey. I reside at 418 East Edgewood here in Morton. I think changing this would be a bad thing for the city. I myself am a business owner. I recently moved back here. I grew up here. I recently moved back here, and as a business owner, I've been looking at properties here in Morton, which I had been looking at properties on First Street there for the fact that they are zoned that way. One of which was recently up for sale, which is one of the few properties that are going to be staying in the proposed plan of that. I didn't end up moving forward with that purchase at that time because of other things, but I had been looking at properties along there. As a business owner, I have not found a property here in Morton because there seems to be a lot, but in reality there's not. And so by literally restricting and moving back on the availability of these properties for the future, I think that would be a detriment to the growth of businesses here in Morton. There are a lot of small businesses that would love to be here in Morton, but there are not a lot of small business spaces here in Morton. I know currently, obviously, if someone is residing in it as a home, that's one thing, but if that went on the market next year and someone was like, oh, look, next door there's a hair salon, I should be able to do this here. Why shouldn't they be able to? I mean, that's how it's been my entire childhood. That's how it should continue to be. I mean, if anything, I think there should be the opposite thing going on, and it should be expanding. But that's my view there. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly disagree with the idea of removing that, or removing that without actually doing what some of the other members here have said, like actually be like, hey, if you don't want to be this, then change it to residential. But in reality, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why change it now? If it's not going to lower the taxes for the people being there, then why even do it? I don't know. It just, in my mind, I mean, as of right now, because I'm a small business owner and I can't find a place here in Morton that works for me, I'm looking outside of Morton. As someone who is going to be residing in Morton for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be living here, but I can't even have a space here. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of that as the business aspect. I mean, I would love to find a space here. If anyone has a space here, let me know. But yeah, so that's my take on that. So I hope that helps.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Hi, my name's Sherry Springer. We live at 316 North 2nd, and nobody seems to be speaking on the other side, and I just wanted to say we would love it to be zoned residential because we live on 2nd, and it's a neighborhood. The businesses that are there, we don't object to, but we'd like the rest to be zoned back to residential.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, ma'am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. I'm William Springer. I live at 316 North 2nd. And I guess I have a question because you mentioned B1 and B2, and I'm not, I don't know what the zoning differences are between a 1 and a 2, but you kind of indicated that business, a B2 would broaden the types of businesses that would be able to establish in that area. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Again, as my wife had said, it is a neighborhood. We would like it to stay as a neighborhood, residential. But, and again, I don't know what all the criteria are for a B1, and that's what you kind of indicated. You wanted to, those that are there, you would want them to stay as a B1 and not broaden it to a B2 to limit the types of businesses that could be run on First Street. Which we don't object to that, like she said. We would like to see those grandfathered in. Again, so that this lady doesn't have to stop doing what she's doing, which she's been allowed to do for 20 or 30 years. Let those businesses be grandfathered in and stay as what they are, but not to expand it any farther in that sense. So that's our perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I'm Valerie Messer. I live at 214 North 2nd. I spoke before when this originally started, when there was going to be a daycare, try to go in there. I agree fully with the Springers. They live down the street from me. We've lived there 30-some years. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood. The businesses that are there are quiet businesses. The people that come are quiet. I sit on my front porch every night when it's nice out and read. And different businesses that would come in could be very noisy. That is our homes. That's where we go to have peace, to live comfortably. You have to think, would you want some of these businesses to come and be in your neighborhood to disrupt your family life? So I would hope that the ones that are there could stay, but I agree with the Springers very much. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this petition? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public comment portion of this petition.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
A part of the job of a plan commission is to avoid as many non-conforming uses as possible, because non-conforming confuses things. And I think that's why the village has brought this up, is that the way it is, way back when, like you say, in the 70s, the plan commission and the village board at that time had some ideas that this street would become commercialized. 30 years later, it hasn't. And so at this point, for everybody in the future, it's better to eliminate as many non-conforming uses as possible, because that way when people come to the village, they can look at it, they can see what things are zoned and know how to deal with it. So that's one reason why I think we need to eliminate all these non-conforming uses that we have, but we're being principled enough to say that where there are businesses today, they fit in B1, we will keep those zonings, or actually change all of those to B1 from B2, so there's still a business. And in the future, if there is a property here that somebody would want to put into business, that single property could be brought forward to the Plan Commission again, and we'd have to look at the business and how it fits and decide if it could be rezoned from R1 to a B1. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't go back and forth on zoning. It's all up to the Plan Commission. So I think the main emphasis right now is let's try to eliminate all these non-conforming uses that we have right now, because 30 years after it was originally put together, it didn't happen, so it's time to clean up the zoning.
So you're in support of the petition?
I am in support of the way it's been reworked now from the last meeting.
I would just say this to that. What if we had a person who just purchased one of these properties and they intended on putting a business in, and they've gone through all this effort to get that property and have their plan, and then we're going to sit here and vote and say that they can't do what they were just intending to do?
Commissioner Smock, we had that. And that was the nail salon that moved into what Bella's salon was, the potential where the daycare was requested. I apologize. Mr. Smock, we had that happen. The proposed daycare, which was Bella's salon, hair salon, which now is the nail salon, they were in the process of purchasing that property, and we worked with them and waited to bring this forward until they got established so that they would not fall into that predicament.
But we have someone that spoke tonight
We have someone that spoke tonight that they've lived in a residential home, non-conforming for 30 years and haven't started a business.
Yeah, I understand the difference. Like I said, I think I'm sensitive to changing expectations. When someone owns a property, we're changing it on them. I'm sensitive to that. And we've had 2 opportunities for people to speak on this, and the same property owner has spoken twice. I think it's fair to say that we know of one person on this list that would reject this. And so I would be in favor of all of these properties. I mean, people have had the opportunity a couple times to publicly express their opinion. All these properties except for the last one, and change it to B1 instead of R1. I mean, I would be open to that, because I feel like there has been a good effort made to contact the citizens. I think this should be R1. I mean, I'm not debating what people are saying. These are neighborhoods. It's this concept of someone purchasing a property with a certain expectation at a certain value based on that expectation, that now the government is going to come in and change.
So I want to understand what you've proposed there, because I didn't understand it.
Yeah, like the list of properties we have on the agenda, the last one was spoken about tonight.
Yes,
And if that was B2 to B1,
yes.
now we'd have a list of properties. I don't know about what these other people think, but they've had an opportunity to speak at this meeting twice now, and they haven't. So I know of one resident that if we changed theirs from B2 to B1, like we are the other business properties, then I feel like everyone else, I guess at this point we can assume they agree with this, and I would feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's where I'm at. I'm just one person. I should just explain where I'm at.
I'm having a hard time with it. I feel like these people bought their properties with the expectation. I don't know why they haven't come to speak necessarily against it, although they haven't come to speak for it. And I just feel like I would appreciate more of an active discussion with these people to figure out if they're okay with the change, because I do feel like this is a significant change that they may not understand. They may not have been notified for whatever reason, whether they're lost their mail, they're traveling, they're sick, whatever. And I would just want to make sure that they understand, because I do feel like this is not a request from them. This is us kind of pushing that change onto them. And I'm just not very comfortable with it.
So I comment. I think I've heard some really good comments tonight on this, and I think as I review the code, by the way, those who don't know what the zoning is, you can go online on the village website and you can see what's allowed in a B1 and a B2. And by reading that, it's pretty obvious that B2 is not going to fly on this street. You know, that was the one that that came to us, the daycare, and that was more of a B2 type of business, but it just is not enough space for that. B2 allows things like restaurants and, aren't I right?
Yes, there's quite a bit. I don't know.
You know, a lot of them have needs for more parking, whereas B1 is more service kinds of businesses where maybe you would have appointments, and you wouldn't need a parking lot for an entire business. You know, you'd be able to probably park on the street or on the driveway and accomplish it, like an attorney's office or accountant or dentist, doctor's office, those kinds of things. So to me, I think something should be done, because B2 is not going to work on this street. And I like the idea, I like what you've done, Village of Morton, by grandfathering in these businesses that are already businesses and calling them B1 instead of B2. And I would support Craig's idea of making the one that at 313 North First Avenue also a B1. And I'm just kind of spitting out everything I'm thinking here, so pardon me on this. And I think that whenever you have two zones face to face, there's going to be sort of that line that's hard to do. You know, you're going to have residential next to business. That's always a little bit difficult. I think that First Street does lend itself to B1. And so if I'm on this board, if we pass it this way, and I'm on this board in the future, I would be very open to doing spot zoning to B1 for these houses that are along here, because they are close enough to the downtown that it is a good location for a business. And it would be a public hearing at that point where the neighbors could come in and weigh in on the the merits of changing that particular piece of property into a B1 piece of property. But I could see supporting this proposal. I really like Craig's idea of offering 313 North First Avenue as a B1 also. I don't know if that's a possibility or if we could do that. Is that something we could do as a plan commission tonight?
You form your own recommendation,
If we
so
want
if that, and just clarification on 313 North First, the proposed business use is a worm farm, which would not be a permitted use in B2 or B1. So what they've suggested they want to use the property for, they couldn't do today or at B1. That'd be a B3 probably.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's important to note there that, I mean, they bought the property under the pretense that it was zoned in the business district, which I think is, you know, they want that option. So I don't disagree with anything you're saying, Jeff. I think it's important to note that, you know, by adopting this ordinance and switching it to R1, it doesn't preclude you from coming back and asking for a zoning change. In fact, I would argue that would probably give you a better chance, you know, to get B1 if you were coming with a business license and you're saying, here's what we want to do on a case-by-case basis. I think this stretch here would be more than likely to receive that zoning change because of what it once was.
It's peppered with B1 if we accept this petition. So it would be, I think, natural.
Mr. Chairman, I'll propose an amendment to this proposal that for 313 North First Avenue, we will change it from B2 to B1 instead of R1.
To pay for B2, I feel we should have B2. That's what we bought it as, and I'd like to grandfather in.
So we cannot accept comments from the audience at this point.
So clarifying, if I may, just as a procedural matter, would it be fair to interpret, since we don't have a motion on the table and since it was a request to amend, that could be interpreted as a motion to approve subject to that amendment? Was that what was intended?
That could be, yes.
Okay.
I'll change it. We'll approve it with change to 313 North First to B1 instead of R1.
So the procedure here would be that someone might second it, and then we would discuss that further.
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. Let's discuss that option. Anybody at the table?
I think all of these are concessions. I mean, even the B2 business owner, or the business owners that have B2 right now are conceding that they can't use the property in the future for some other purpose. And I think we probably all agree that it's probably for the best for the neighborhood and for everyone else. So I just want to make the point that there are probably a lot of property owners on this list that are making a concession. Just because it makes sense today that, oh, that's what their business is, it's a B1 type of business, they're still making some kind of concession, like we spoke about, that there was an expectation for what they could have done with their property, and now they're going to lose that right. And so it's not likely that I would approve this, but I would vote yes for this amendment. But I think there are a lot of property owners that would be making concessions on that. I think that's worth acknowledging.
I think one last point, if we use the daycare as an example, Craig, you know, you had someone there that purchased the property as a B2, thinking that they could use the business for daycare, but the safety concerns and some of the other things that came along with that business led to it being denied, right?
I think that was that a special use?
Yeah.
That wasn't a guarantee.
Right.
They didn't have a guarantee to be able to buy that business, buy that property and put a daycare in there.
Correct.
They didn't have that guarantee
I
from the start.
think it protects against that a little bit too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I feel for the residents that, you know, they probably moved in just not even looking at their zoning map, right? And not even realizing that their backdoor neighbor could be a restaurant tomorrow. So I feel for that, but I feel stronger for the expectation of the property owner and what the expectations they had. Other people have the right to look at zoning maps and figure out, or to realize themselves, well, this vacant property someday could be something I don't want. And they go into that purchase knowing that, right? There's fair warning of what things can become. And so it's when that fair warning goes away that I am less comfortable. But I'm comfortable with what's on the table.
Anybody else have anything they want to say about that?
I can't say it any better than Craig said it, but I agree completely with what Craig said.
Well, I think that Jerry's motion actually, is a good amendment to the petition. And I think that anybody who wants to change their property from residential to business to B1, I think it would be it's a reasonable request. Not that I'm saying it's going to get passed, but it's a reasonable request based on the neighborhood. So, any other comments? If not, let's call the roll.
Keach,
Yes.
Nepp,
No.
Opperly,
Yes.
Ritterbusch,
Yes.
Smock,
Yes.
Guile,
Yes.
DeWeese.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next is petition, subject property, petition number 22-02SP. Subject properties are located at 641 and 651 Harding Road. Petition's been filed by Steve Lehman. He's requesting a special use at these properties to permit building to be a 39-foot height building. So, is Steve here? Would you like to make a presentation, Steve?
Please raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
Well, thanks for the opportunity to share this and consider this request. I got the packet. I believe each of you have a packet. But then the zoning.
Give your name and
Oh, yeah,
your address.
sorry.
I'm sorry, Steve. It's
I forgot.
standard.
Yep, you bet. My name is Steve Lehman. I live at 414 Wolf Crossing Drive in Morton. And is that everything or is there anything else? Okay, we can dive right in. We had the zoning map up just a second ago, and I guess
You want that
you
map
can
up?
probably bring it back either way. Yeah, I just want to clarify something on that because we're right at the edge of the zoning map, just so I can touch on that topic first. Okay, you can see in the green there in the middle, that's the R4 property. So it's all, the property we're talking about is already zoned R4. That's not changing on this request. We're just matching, the top piece is R4 with an S special for making sure they can do the 3-story, 39-foot. So what the request is here is just to match that for continuity and with the adjacent attached lot that's already in that same classification. But when on the request, it asks us to identify what's north, south, east, and west of the subject property. Since we're on a skew, it could be a little bit confusing on what's north, east, and all that. But I put down north is the R4 3-story because it is. So we're just asking to match what's already attached to it. And then to the east, depending on how you draw the line, is also still the same property. But I'm the property owner for the for that neighboring attached piece. I'm just asking for it to be able to be conformed or continuous in the same fashion. So I hope that clears up if there's any questions on that part. But so really the request is primarily to make it consistent, so it's more aesthetically pleasing and just has a flow to it with the look and feel of the lifestyle center, we'll call it. It's upscale housing. It's close to Gold's Gym and the daycare, so it'll be great to support local businesses. We also have a letter of support from Gold's Gym and from the Morton Economic Development Council, as well as some other tenants that live nearby. So we feel like we have a pretty good, strong support from the local adjacent properties in general. There's a lot of benefits to going with the 3-story, the 39-foot. The consistency across the other lots nearby is a big part of it. Also, it allows for more yard space, so we can have professionally maintained yards and more landscaping and trees, which also helps with making it feel more secluded from neighboring properties. So it gives us more flexibility to make the greenscaping better. So if you go to the, I don't know if you have the, probably the 4th slide that I had in there.
They do have copies of all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Then, I mean, you can see that basically to the north we have a 3-story already, and slightly to the east. And then to the west we have industrial, Gold's Gym, the daycare. And then going south we have more industrial and then the interstate. So I feel like this shouldn't be problematic, I wouldn't think, and fits nicely in this location. So far with the leasing process, we've had a lot of people who are looking for upscale housing who are primarily young working professionals, many of them working at Rivian and Caterpillar, OSF, some Bradley as well, and Methodist. So you get a lot of the younger working professionals. They're high earners. I mean, this is all market rate upscale apartments. So we're getting people who have to earn a good living to be there. The Rivian industry is bringing a lot of people who want to live in the Morton area. It's only 22 minutes to get from here to the factory in Bloomington. So there's been a lot of demand from them. We've also seen a lot of retirees who want to live here in Morton. Many of them have family in the area, and it's just a great, safe community. So a large portion is young, single working people, as well as retirees. There are some with families, of course, but it's not near as much as I would have expected. It's been a lot of people on both ends of the spectrum as far as their career goes. And many of them are also work from home. So a lot of times with the 2 bedrooms, they're using the 1 bedroom for themselves, and then the 2nd bedroom is oftentimes used as a work from home location. So I guess that's the main thing, I guess, as far as an overview, but I'm open to any questions or feedback on that.
So you're asking, the thing you're asking for is that it could go to
The
3
height,
stories
yeah.
instead of just the 2, which is, I think, is what the code.
2.5 at 35 feet is the permitted.
Okay, 2.5 at 35 feet.
So we're just asking for the extra half-story, extra 4 feet, which about a year ago was part of the standard code anyway, so this really isn't much different.
Amendment to it. Any questions for the petitioner? I guess not. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it, thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak to this petition?
I'm sorry, what?
Anybody from the audience want to speak about this?
I do.
Come on up.
Excuse me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So, my name is John Crawford. I live at 25691 Harding Road, and I also own the house at 25659 Harding Road, which is next door. And I'm not familiar with this format, so if I need correction, by all means. But right out of the gate, the petition lists my house as a 3-story, and it is not a 3-story home. And it totally ignores the 1-story ranch next to it. I don't know if that's a big deal or not, but it seems to me that the petition should be accurate as the properties are. So, going on to the next point, I have a sketch that I received that was put out by Mr. Lehman, I assume, that is showing, as nearly as I can tell, 7 buildings across the street in this double lot. There are already 3, 96 units. If there are 7 or 8 more buildings, I'm doing some guessing here because the drawings aren't extremely detailed, but you're talking about putting 350 units on 2 lots. And has there been any sort of a traffic study at all about Harding Road and any improvements? Or are we going to have 600 or 700 cars coming in and out one driveway 2 times a day? Can anyone answer that question, or is that?
I'm not aware of any traffic studies that have been done.
Anything for schools?
I'm not aware of the schools.
Anything on
Studies.
police and fire? If you add a 3rd story, that's going to just add more risk for the fire department and the EMTs doing any sort of work there.
I'm not aware of any of those departments or entities doing any kind of studies.
So, as it stands right now, the 96 units, their only entrance is on Harding Road. No light plan that I'm aware of. And now you're talking about, if I'm correct, 7 or 8 more buildings at 32 units per? Is that accurate?
No, not quite. So what is the procedure for me to respond?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways in which you can proceed, and the chair can give directions to supplement mine, but you can come, we want to get you on the microphone if you're going to respond to specific comments, so you can either come up now with chair's consent and Mr. Crawford's consent. It is his time where he can finish, and then you'd have the opportunity after he's done.
Well, my time's not going to be abbreviated, is it?
There's no time limit, so.
Okay. I'd love responses from Mr. Lehman.
You may approach the mic if you would like to and respond to his question.
Do we take turns? Is that?
Sure. Yeah.
No, I appreciate, I would love to have talked earlier so we could work through a lot of this stuff before, of course, that would be good, but we're here now, so these are good questions. No, there's nowhere near 300 and something units planned. It's not even close to that. So that's not, plus this is also a multi-year process to get them built.
What are these? This is what I received. That's all I have.
It's a preliminary. This is a preliminary, and these are much smaller than what we're trying to do is go a lot smaller with the length of the building. So it's not not near as large as what you imagined or that you stated here, but I can understand why there would be a misguess on that. And as far as the fire department, we actually have been working with the fire department. They're very involved in the planning phase before we get anything going. So we're discussing the plan, getting the layout with them, getting their input. And even throughout construction, they're doing inspections. We even had the fire department run some practice drills in the existing buildings, all 3 of them. We have 3 buildings up now. 1 is almost complete, 1's drywall, 1's in the framing stage. And we worked with the fire department and let them use it as a training opportunity. So they could run through with their crew and just do a test run on how they would respond if there was an event. And this is all voluntarily doing it. So they've been a really good partner to work with. They're very involved in the planning process. They're all fire sprinklered buildings. and they've got fire protection with the drywall and the whole design process.
Is it going to be sprinkled?
Yes, yeah, they'll be sprinkled, yep, for sure. Trying to think of what else you had mentioned that I should respond to. Is there something? Yeah, as far as I guess your house, you're in the gray area that's not on the zoning map, so it wasn't clear to me what yours is. Just from the outside, it has 3 levels of windows, and it's about the same height as what we're building. So I was saying this is similar in height to what you've got, and it's got 3 levels of windows similar to what you have. I've never been inside your house. I don't know how many stories it is, but I do know to the north, we've got the same thing as what we're asking for. And then to the east, as far as I'm aware of, on our property, it's the same thing as what we're asking for.
Well, and in a direct response there, yes, I would guess that my house is probably every bit as tall as what you are asking for, although it was built 110 years ago, before zoning laws even existed, and there's nothing that I could do to alter that. The other thing that in retrospect, somehow, when you applied for this change for the 3 buildings that you already have, I don't know if I was asleep at the switch or what, but I was not really aware, or I would have, don't know what changed the outcome, but I would have not been in favor of that then either, because I think they're a little overpowering based on the density. And again, we've got, I have to be honest, I was surprised that they put the entrance to the existing 3 buildings on Harding Road. Cortland is an improved road with a turn lane, and yet they put the entrance on Harding Road, which is a unimproved 2-lane with no shoulders, no curb, no sidewalk, no nothing. Although you're putting sidewalks in now.
Right, yeah, we are.
And now we're talking about putting, how many units will there be when it's all done? Do you know?
This request doesn't change the number of units at all. It doesn't change the density or anything at all. We're just talking about the height matching up with the neighboring property. That's really all we're talking about right here.
Well, but if we take 1 story off the top, that's going to change the density.
Well, then it actually doesn't, because then those come down to the ground level, and it just means there's less landscaping, less trees, which I think it's better to have more greenscape, more space for that's professionally maintained, professionally landscaped. It doesn't change the density or the use, it just changes us back to matching up with the neighboring heights.
Okay. Well, again, I was asleep at the switch on the first time around. That's my fault. I'm here tonight. I suppose the bottom line in my mind, I've built in this town for 35 years myself, and the rules were in place, and we lived by the rules. And if the village has an ordinance that says 35 feet, then why do we continue to give exceptions to that rule? If you don't like the rule, why not change the ordinance so that we're not having these sort of disagreements here in a public forum? Again, I don't understand.
Maybe I can help answer that. A special use is a permitted use in maybe certain circumstances, where maybe it fits in certain areas where maybe it wouldn't in other areas. So that's the premise behind a special use.
I understand special use. We have one ourselves, but you've currently, correct me if I'm wrong, but you gave the 3-story on Jefferson Street, which is the heart of downtown, and now you're doing it out in a semi-suburban area. I don't understand.
Well, the village board approves the special uses, so you'd have to ask the village board what their thought is. But I would say that they felt it was appropriate to have a 3-story where the Jefferson building is.
Another point, it was up until about a year and a half ago, I think, that 3.5 stories, at least 3, maybe even 3.5 stories was allowed without any special request for an R4 zone property. So for this to even become a special use has only happened within the last year and a half. And that was primarily, I believe, to give some control to the board to say, if it's next to a bunch of single-family homes or something, maybe we don't want a 3-story building right there. But if we're next to other homes or properties that are similar, then it makes sense. I mean, I'm kind of guessing on that, but the timeline of the history of it, it has been allowed for the majority of my existence in Morton, which is 12, 15 years by now, I think.
Well, and to be absolutely open about the whole thing, that property's been zoned I-2 for the last 50 years. When the village rezoned it for the theoretical Caterpillar expansion that never came to be, and then when the Opperleys purchased the ground, they made it into an industrial park. It's all zoned I-2. I'm happy that it's going R4 instead of I-2. So even though I may sound a little antagonistic, that's just my nature. I'm not totally against this. I just am not really in favor of the 3 stories. And again, I'll go back to it. If the village doesn't want 39 feet, or if they want 39 feet, then change the ordinance.
Thank you for your comments.
And one last thing. Sorry. The builders have probably been less than good neighbors throughout this first phase, and I had originally, we contacted the office, that didn't do any good. We contacted the village, that didn't do any good. I ended up having to call the police, and because there was so much mud on the road, my wife has a Suburban, which has got more than 3 inches of ground clearance, and the chunks of mud were hitting the exhaust system on the car. And we had to call the police to get it cleaned up. And as of 1 o'clock this afternoon, the Ackerman and Weedman property east of the 3 buildings, the entire 40 acres, 20 acres is covered in trash. And the property on the other side of Cortland is in the same condition. There is so much building debris out there, it's mind-numbing. And that, again, I spent 38 years in construction myself. That's not supposed to happen.
Well, on that topic, we have hired extra help to stay on. We have hired extra help to stay on top of that. I had never received a phone call, but in my mind, it was preemptive. When I saw that there was some, I immediately told our crew, we've got to really focus on that and clean that area up. We have other things we can do as well. We have a rock entrance, but we need to do a better job with that, or we could also fence it in during construction. I'll say the good news is once it's completed, there won't be that issue, as we'll have professionally landscaped yards. I mean, that's a whole lot better than the current stockpile of rock and gravel where you constantly have trucks trucking dirt back and forth currently. But once we get this developed and finished off, it'll actually improve that whole situation for you.
And you have no current drawings for the entrance and exits to this phase?
We're working on it, yeah. We're working on it with the village, but it's the engineers are trying to pin it down. The specific exact entrance is still in flux. But
So could I interrupt now and say that this is just a zoning hearing? And, you know, Mr. Lehman does come to these meetings sometimes with more drawings about what he's planning to do, but that's not really what we're about. We're just about the zoning. And he still has to provide drawings to the city for what he wants to do, and you know, there's a process for that.
Well, and again, I may have brought some things up that weren't really necessary in this format, and if I did, I apologize for that. The bottom line is, I'm not against the apartments at all, because that's an improvement over a chemical factory, which is what could have gone there. But I'm just, the 3-story thing is killing me. So I'm done.
Thank you for your comments.
All right, thanks.
I appreciate it.
Does anyone else want to speak to this petition? Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good evening. My name's Jeremy Cook. I own the property at 25765 Harding Road, just north of Mr. Crawford's property. I was going to read everything on the sheet tonight, but what I've been hearing, I think I'm just going to say a few things. My biggest concern on for this 3-story is my privacy on my property. Everywhere I walk on my property, I have a window looking at me. So I don't know if that's a setback issue. I don't know if it's the height issue, but it's definitely an issue. So I'm gonna be out my property there. I'm gonna have somebody looking out a window at everything I do. Okay, so just that on privacy. Mr. Crawford talked about the road congestion. I was worried about that. Clearly, if he does his 3 stories, he could add more people. I know this is not for that yet. We'll talk with the board more about that when we get there. I don't want to waste your guys' time. Me personally, aesthetically, I think those buildings stick out at 3 stories. I don't think they look good, especially out industrial area. I don't know where you put 3-story buildings in Morton, but it's your guys' decision to give this special use permit for 3-story. Yes, they're out there. Yes, I probably got some information on the 3 that they already put up. The one facing my property, if it was maybe 50 or 100 feet more off the road, it might not be bad, but it's really close to the road, and it's like a big billboard. So I could put a business up out there at my place. Anybody from North Morton Avenue going to see that? No way. So that's about all I got to say. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth and the truth?
Good evening. I'm Chad Bell, and I own Blue Jays Learning Center. That's 1610 North Main, right next to Gold's Gym. Pretty close to the area we're talking about here. Same as Mr. Crawford, we didn't know about the first buildings going up and didn't get that opportunity to speak on that as well. However, we feel that those buildings are beautiful, and we like the addition to the area. We have no objections at all to that continuing the growth over there closer to our building. We think that the 3 stories would be best to keep it uniform with what's currently there. So we think it would look really good to keep that going, support the growth of the community. I like the ideas of the greenery, the trees, the landscaping. Be much better than the field and the gravel and rock piles that are there right now and the dirt piles. I do have the same concern as Mr. Crawford as far as the traffic on Harding Road. You know, if we could make improvements to that road and the lighting, that'd be great. But overall, I don't want to take much of your time. I just wanted to say that we do support this permit to go to 39 feet, 3 stories. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion of this petition. I have a question that's I think I know the answer to this, Brad, but the zoning, does that not set the density of the property at the number of people that can actually live, or the number of units?
It meets setbacks, it meets stormwater, so if you're talking about the
What I
buildings.
mean is the difference between a 2-story and a 3-story. If it goes to 3-story, that doesn't mean he has more units on the property, does it? It just...
I believe it does, but I think what Mr. Lehman was saying, you would expand outward as opposed to upward.
Exactly. The density is still like a certain number of units per acre.
That's
that
what I'm
doesn't
talking
change.
about.
So yeah, it doesn't change
Yeah.
the density, whether it's 2-story, 3-story.
It does not change the density. So my point is, I think I'm hearing that whether it's 2-story or 3-story, there's still going to be the same number of people allowed on the property. Is that right?
I think that potentially could be true, yes.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Yes.
So I think what Steve was saying was, And the way you get more density, if it's two-story, is you have more buildings. So, okay. How does the road get addressed? I'm asking the village.
I think that would first get directed to Director of Public Works.
Okay.
And we could ask what his thoughts are on that.
Is that under the purview of this committee?
The location of the road would be set during site plan review, and the Director of Public Works, Loudermilk, is extensively involved in providing direction on how many entrances or exit points and where those should be located.
That's exactly
not up
his.
to us.
No, that would be up to the village engineer.
I'm assuming the existing one and the new one would be joined, or would they be completely separate entrances?
Well, so, like I said, Mr. Lane would come with a proposal. He has engineers engineering that for him. That would go through our site plan review, the Director
But
of
there's a
Public
potential that
Works.
they could be joined even though they're separate lots.
I mean, I guess anything's, I mean, I'm not an engineer, so Craig Loudermilk would approve that based on his expertise in that field.
You'd have to have a variance or a big.
Oh, you mean to
we'd have a
join?
pavement. Yeah,
Yes.
if your suggestion is that there remain one exit from the entirety of the development, and that this property would exit out through the existing.
Or two, so that they can both go, and then that way, there's,
You're talking about shared entrances?
yes.
Pavement across the property line would present a setbacks issue, so that'd require a variance in the absence of there being a common drive approved in site plan.
Okay. And I realize that's outside of the scope of what we're talking about, but
That's outside of our
yeah.
area. So are there any other questions or any more discussion at the table? I assume we had all the questions answered that we had from Mr. Lehman. Are there any other comments or points that we should make at the table?
The two main things, this would match what's already constructed, and the density won't change. Those two facts.
Right. And it is zoned, I mean, it's zoned for multifamily housing. The only thing that he's here asking for is a taller building. So, right?
Which I believe a year and a half ago, we switched from the R4 from a 3.5 to a 2.5, as I believe the same developer was putting in buildings on the south end of town near a more residential dense area. And I think that brought us that concern to us, where we changed that to where we did the 2.5 story now, so where we could have a little input and a little provision on where to allow the 3-story building. And this is just on height. Site plan review is still going to be going on, so I'm assuming he's wanting to know what's going to happen before he spends the money with engineers as far as layout goes. I'm sure there's a lot of cost to that. So.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second the motion.
And a second. Any further discussion? Let's call the roll.
Neff.
Yes.
Guile.
Yes.
Ritterbusch.
Yes.
Smock.
Yes.
Offerly.
Abstain.
DeWeese.
Yes.
Keach.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next petition is petition number 22-03SP. Subject property is located at 700 South 4th Avenue. The petition has been filed by Maria Lehman. Mrs. Lehman is requesting a special use at the property to permit a private school. Is there anybody from the petitioner? Please come forward.
All right, I am Maria Lehman, and I live on 63 Shiloh Street in Morton. I am here on behalf of our private Christian school, Solid Rock Christian Academy, that we are starting in the fall. And we are requesting to switch the zoning from R4 to R4 with special use on 700 South 4th Avenue. Do you have any questions? I have a short video of what the outside is going to look like, and with the traffic flow, with the parking lot that's already there, the large backyard for future growth or playground exploration. This is the view from the street on the west side, so complete with birds chirping in the background. We initially anticipate 15 to 20 students this first year, and then we'll be adding a grade starting in kindergarten, and we'll be adding a grade every year thereafter. So potentially we could have 75 students, 6 teachers, etc. You can move it faster if you want.
Are you,
Yeah.
you done?
Yeah. Or you can see like we made sure there's a fence in the parking lot. Our goal is to have administration in the back of the parking lot and then have that drop-off zone in the front. The parking lot is actually really big. We went out there and made sure it all worked out. So back exit, all fenced in, playground, nice manicured grass. Thanks, Fred. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for the petitioner?
I'm just curious how many grade levels you're planning to grow it to?
6th grade,
6th grade.
K through 6th.
Okay.
And again, this is not we're not voting on her concept. We're just voting on the zoning, whether we think that's an appropriate place. Because there's, a lot of work to make sure the building meets school standards and that sort of thing. This is just a vote on zoning. Thank you very much. Is there anybody here who has a comment for the or about this petition? Hearing none. Any further discussion?
I just have a question about the zoning. So it's R4, so was it under a special use with the lodge?
No.
No.
I think the lodge has been out for quite some time, so it would have been non-conforming as a Masonic lodge at the time. Because it's owned R4. Multi-family.
So the zoning for that area probably came in after the lodge was built?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Any motions?
I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
I'll second.
Okay. Call roll.
Keach?
Yes.
Ritterbush?
Yes.
Smock?
Yes.
Guile? Yes. DeWeese?
Yes.
Offerly?
Yes.
Neff?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we have now, is this still in the public hearing, an ordinance making amendments to section 10, 15, 12 of the Morton Municipal Code regarding the mixed-use overlay district map?
Yes.
So, Brad, you want to explain that quickly?
This is the same ordinance that I brought in October that changes the mixed-use district, and it reflects on this map that with the rezoning, the proposed rezoning on First Avenue, that would reflect the need to take those out of the mixed-use district, because that would no longer make them eligible as mixed use. So that makes this map reflect that zoning. So this would be on condition that that is approved, that rezoning is approved.
Makes sense. Me, it does. Any questions?
Well, so any of those properties that did remain business, do they have any
They would
opinion
fall outside of the mixed
of
use.
no longer being allowed to have mixed use?
You know, the mixed use ordinance is very difficult to meet on a lot like that anyway. I've kind of looked into that a little bit. It's difficult to actually meet the mixed use, all the requirements that we have for mixed use.
It's almost got to be 2 stories, doesn't it?
Yes, and there's certain
Parking.
requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy.
It didn't work very well there anyway as a mixed use neighborhood, so. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
A second. And roll call.
Ritterbusch,
Yes.
Smock,
Yes.
Guile,
Yes.
DeWeese,
Yes.
Keach,
Yes.
Knapp,
Yes.
Opperly,
Yes.
approved.
We have no other business, but I see Brad Marks is pointing to something here.
So
I do have a question too, and I don't know when is appropriate in the meeting form to ask it, so.
That
Go
would
now?
be other
Go
business.
now? So previously, Mr. Lehman has brought a couple different PRD, planned residential developments, to the board. And I know when we met in October, there was significant discussion about how majority of the board did not necessarily feel comfortable with the obligations that seem to be outlined for planned residential as far as approval of traffic flow, water retention, all that kind of stuff that usually Craig Loudermilk does. I have no, what do other communities do for planned residential? Are our requirements more restrictive? Because I do feel like the sketches and the drawings that Mr. Lehman brought would be a good fit for Morton. And I'm just concerned that we have made the process cumbersome to the point where we're not going to allow things like that to happen in Morton because we've maybe structured it in a negative way or whatever, in a prohibitive way. I don't know. Anyone else had any thoughts on that?
My thought on that is that the planned residential development ordinance that we have is rather, what's the right word?
Thorough?
There's a better word.
Yeah.
Cumbersome, restrictive.
I almost had it. It was right on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, it's very rigorous.
There you go.
Rigorous. And for good reason, because there's so many things about a planned residential development that could go wrong if you don't do it right, having to do with traffic and public space. And I don't see any need to change or talk about any. I mean, Mr. Lehman didn't quite have it quite figured out yet, according to the village, and for that particular case. And I think in the future, we would probably appreciate it if if somebody comes before us with a planned residential development, that they would have a lot more information to share with us. You know, have some of that rigor taken care of.
From an administrative standpoint, I would say it's a fair statement that discouraging, not encouraging planning unit developments would be the overall consensus of I don't want to speak for others, but those who I work with regularly on issues like this within the village. The primary concerns with planned residential development is the failure of the developer, and then you have these private roads that don't meet normal village specifications. You have private water mains don't meet village specifications. The developer fails, and then the village has to step in and rescue things. So I think it's the fact that our existing ordinance is rigorous reflects a preference to steer developers towards more conventional means of building out their infrastructure, whether that's putting in roads and dedicating them to the village that meet village specifications, or in this case, single ownership of the entirety of the development by one owner for the entire parcel. So that we have a few planned residential developments in town. Some of the EPA rules for private water mains complicate things. EPA really doesn't acknowledge there is such a thing as a private water main, and you get into developers having to have operators to manage their own infrastructure past where the village lines drop off. And so there's complexities to it that do require an abundance of caution and an abundance of planning. And so while I don't anticipate any changes are forthcoming imminently, I would say from my conversations with Director of Public Works Laudermilk and others, we'd be less likely to bring forward suggestions to loosen those restrictions than to tighten them.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I guess I was forgetting the component of those aren't village entities after that. I guess I just liked the vision of having an area with the different residential mixes and not necessarily being so constricted to the different lots, like squared lots. I did think that had a nice aesthetic and it would fit well in Morton, and I don't know how you go about accomplishing that while still maintaining, the integrity of the roadways and the waterways and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a thought.
Okay, thank you. Brad, are we going to be getting transcripts now?
Yes.
The
Planning Commission.
From now on?
Yes.
Okay, just wondered. Okay.
Lee does a great job. She provide those for us.
All right.
I do put those in with the village board. So the next village board meeting, when they get recommendations, the village board also sees the transcripts.
Very good. Did you want to say anything about your agenda item?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the new zoning map with all the updates, the village of Morton official map, the land use map have all been updated to reflect all the changes that came through the Planning Commission this last year. So everything is now updated on the website. If you go to the website, you can see everything's up to date currently.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Very good. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.